What's good, Shop Nation? How y'all doing? How y'all feeling? Hopefully a little bit better than me because I'm already clearing my throat. But it's still amazing, an amazing time to be here with y'all. Another Friday afternoon. We had to move around some things for Thursday, but shout out to everybody tapping in either on YouTube right now or who are listening to us on Blog Talk Radio, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts. Definitely happy to have y'all here. Fall has arrived. Fall has arisen.
We here,
Fall has
Arisen.
arrived. I think that's what I was trying to say. Is here. And as a result, man, Cooties is on the move. So I feel a little suspicious, but not bad enough to stay away from the Chop Nation. And I'm hoping y'all doing all right. Plug, how you feeling out here in these streets, bro?
Man, I'm good. I was just worried about you. You know what I'm saying? After we talked yesterday, I'm like, oh no, you feel me? But
Listen.
I see you ready to pull it out today, so I go ahead and put you on my back and carry the show.
I
I ain't
appreciate
worried
you
about it. I
thugging it with
got
me.
you.
If you hear me take a couple extra deep breaths, just know I'm over here fighting for my life. But I do it for y'all. I do it for the love of the game. And I do it for my bro. You know what I'm saying? We got a lot of important stuff to talk about. We can't let too many things get past us before we tap back into each other. And one of those things is absolutely, definitely Cop City, which is high up on the list of conversations that we need to be having. Definitely, I think a result of a video, or at least part of this conversation, is a contribution that we have from somebody from Chop Nation. So I got to make sure I shout out the homie, and I want to make sure I get the names right because y'all show me love. On the gram, they go by the name of the real Andre Rose. So shout out to Andre Rose
Shout out to
for
Andre Rose.
making sure that we are staying up on the conversation. We definitely take the suggestions y'all give us to heart and try to take something and make something out of it. So this conversation about Cop City is one that's long overdue. I'm gonna be honest about it. You know what I'm saying? It's Chop Nation, as a chop up show. We typically always stay on the post of these things, but we've been kind of letting it unfold a little bit. We kind of letting some things unwind, let some things materialize, and now based on Andre's contribution, based on me and the Plus conversation, we thought it was a good time to go ahead and start to sew some things up and make some connections. So, with that being said, shout out to Andre and then Plug. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. What's going on in Cop City? What's going on in Atlanta right now?
So just to kind of fill y'all in, man, a while back, Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms of Atlanta um, let it be known that, and this was after Rayshard Brooks, after the murder of Rayshard Brooks by the police department, Atlanta PD. There was a conversation about reform that needed to take place in Atlanta, right? But so often that conversation of reform always ends up creating and replicating other forms of violence or oppression that the reform is actually meant to fix. And so what was suggested as a way to fix the police was new training, right? We just need to train them better. We just need new
Which I
facilities.
mean, I hate. I'm gonna go ahead and just jump in on this whole training conversation real quick to talk about how much I think it is, a statement and a gesture that is to make a mockery of a lot of the demands that we've had. You know what I'm saying? For a couple different reasons. One, I think training becomes this catch-all phrase to be like, we doing something, you ain't really doing shit. Because how do we quantify training? We don't even get to look at the trainings, we don't even get to understand the trainings, and oftentimes those trainings are not facilitated by third parties who don't have an interest in keeping shit standard status quo and how it is. You know what I'm saying? Secondly, I think the idea of training being a solution only highlights and underscores the fact that the police suck and they ass. Because if y'all need training not to like beat the shit out of somebody who's not an immediate threat to you, to not shoot at somebody in their back when they not coming towards you, and if they running away from you, to not, you know, create public hazards by putting officers back on the street that didn't take in
Right.
the first training
Right.
didn't take it, so y'all just don't do that no more. You send it back there. And so it's training. And so it's so disheartening to know that, you know, large scale infrastructure is being set up and created for the sake of training. What the fuck happened to y'all can't go to them same training facilities in your own city, in your own neighborhood, in your own district, in your own whatever, and just do it right the first time? Like, what is all this accelerated training? But I'm gonna turn it back over to you. It's just that it's almost like it's a buzzword and it's a trigger word for me,
Right.
because that's all we've been hearing about over and over and over again is training.
And
Like, I
and
talk about business. Nigga, we talk about training. I'm sorry, carry on.
no, I mean, we on the same page, right? Because I think this is also where this is why I specifically use the word reform, and why reform ends up coming up short in a lot of ways is because a lot of the issues that not even a lot the issues that black people have with police are fundamental, right? They're not things that can be, let's just shift it around, move the deck chairs on the Titanic. Like, nah, the whole shit gotta sink in order to fix it. But we know that that's not something that this society is willing to do, because it's too much that they would have to concede in order for that to be in order for that to come true. So the Keisha Lance Bottoms idea of reform was, and the city council at the time, as well as different black advocacy groups, like black crime advocacy groups, were all for what's now known as Cop City, right? And to give y'all a better understanding of what Cop City is, let's just take a look at it. Article by ABC News kind of helps us understand it. What is Cop City? The center is expected to cost $90 million and take up over 85 acres, with the remaining portion of the 265 acres property as green space. Now, we're going to talk about why this little green space idea is there in the first place. But again, $90 million over 85 acres. The center will include
just in case, and I want to kind of be clear about what an acre is, because I'm always like acres. You know, we around forest fires and stuff like that. So I'm like, how much is an acre? The common person doesn't know how big an acre is. An acre is about the size of a football field, without the end zones, if I'm not mistaken, right? So about 100 yards, give or take a little bit of space there. So 85 of them things is the amount of space that is being used for this infrastructure. And real quick too, I want to shout out to everybody in the chat who coming in, already dropping comments, not with the shits. Chris John, Dina, Tucky V. Shout out to all y'all, you know what I'm saying? Like, really weighing in on this. Forget training, I want reparations. They say training just killing a black person. They always talking about some training, you know what I'm saying? We on to it. We on the case, you know what I'm saying? Definitely about to crack some of this and get into it for ourselves, but we got to salute y'all for coming in. So I'm sorry, I want to come back. I just wanted to be clear. So $90 million, 86 acres?
85 acres.
85 acres.
Now but this is the thing. It's going to take up 85 acres, but it's going to be a total of 65 acres left that they own that'll be green space. Sure. So that the facility itself will be 85 acres, but the remaining 265 of the land, and we're gonna talk about that land too, because it's a huge environmental issue that's being created with it as well, obviously. But the facility itself will include an auditorium for police, fire, and public use, a mock city for burn building training and urban police training, a mock city, an emergency vehicle operator course for emergency vehicle driving, a K9 unit kennel, and training according to the center's website. This training facility will not only help boost morale, retention. This is the argument that they're making, right? We're debating. We like to lay out the argument that we responded to before we really get in their ass. But will give us physical space to ensure that our officers and firefighters are receiving 21st century training rooted in respect and regard for the communities they serve, said then Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms when the center's lease agreement was approved. Why are people protesting it? Protests escalated when a protester, Manuel Esteban Paez Terran, was, and I know I'm not pronouncing that accent correctly, so my apologies to him and his family, was shot and killed by police as they raided the campground occupied by demonstrators in January. So his brother was killed in January. Officials say the protester fired the first shot at the state trooper, and the officer responded with the fatal shot. Now, to add more context to why people are protesting, Defend the Atlanta Forests have argued that the center will impact forests, which are vital part of the community. Which are a vital part of the community. They said Atlanta has one of the highest percentages of tree canopy in any major U.S. city, according to the environmental advocacy group Trees Atlanta. It is home to wetlands, an important migration site for birds. Right. So not only do you have this police question, but you also have this environmental question, right?
Right.
And so Cop City, as it's just been dubbed, is really about to take up a bunch of environmental land, and it's next to a, which we'll talk about more, a black community called Gresham Park, which is a middle class, working class black community that's now about to be right next to these police. So
Right.
when dealing with like the cops shooting the brother Rayshard Brooks, we get to spending $90 million on taxpayer money on on training police, which kind of like as you pointed out, I feel like my criticism of the whole training aspect is how is not reserving life core baseline bottom line training that you received already, right?
Yeah.
Like if we talking about the issue with the relationship between the community and the police, a facility, yeah, maybe a classroom where these
Yeah.
niggas need to be sitting down and taking notes and maybe some lectures, maybe some workshops. You feel me? But a whole $90 million facility to
When
me
I mean,
is
I'm talk about like fuck what you talking about. You know what I'm saying? When we said defund the police, they said we got 90 million for you.
90 million, and that's the estimated
Like,
cost. That's the estimated cost.
we know it's gone all over because we keep seeing these souped up ass police cars. We keep
Right.
seeing these cars that's able to, blend even more and more into common people's vehicles. We seeing Hellcats and shit come up with lights on them. You know what I'm saying? Like, so of course, y'all gonna go ahead and embellish. We got candidates all over the place, different senators, different politicians who are backing the blue, right? So they making sure little other bumps that can help insulate and supplement budgets is there. There's no doubt in my mind about that shit.
So, but what I also think is important though is the current mayor. What's his name? I think it's Eric Dickens. Andre Dickens, the current mayor,
Right.
Andre Dickens, and the past mayor, Keisha Lance Bottoms. These is both black people, right? And these are supposed to be when we think of black politicians. You know, I advocate for black politicians like a mug. Like
Yeah, I ain't moved on, but yeah, you love to tell us that those things.
but I mean, but because I guess this is where I would say, like, I feel like this, like these people end up making y'all criticism more valid and undermining my argument. Like I
Yeah,
think as much as Keisha Lance Bottoms represented or attempted to represent what Atlanta stood for, like, and the black communities of Atlanta specifically, the idea that a $90 million training facility for police, right, a whole city where they could just practice urban, you know what I'm saying, not policing, but like urban tactical, like that's like war shit. Like that's not the proper facilities that's needed to address the conversation specifically of what's wrong with the relationship between black communities and police. So like
it is.
I find it striking. You know what I'm saying?
It
That
is, and
two
I
black
mean,
mayors
she's
would be
not
for
a
that.
two black mayors, and she's not a governor, but it makes me feel better about like Governor Newsom. You know what I'm saying? Like we live in a state and I'm not finna just like gas up liberals or even his liberal ass because he got his own criticisms. You know what I'm saying? Like I ain't gonna call it crime, but I'm gonna call it structural limitations and structural violence that invite and encourage crime.
Hit that like
Is
button.
is
Hit
an
that like button.
all-time how out here. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a lot of shit for California to have to figure out. We got water issues every other day. A beach is being shut down because it's a spill here, or some issue there, or some shit in the water over here. So it's a whole lot of stuff going on in California that, like, you know what I'm saying, I'm not with. So I'm not completely aligned with everything that has to do with a Governor Newsom. But I will say it's some shit that's just not gonna happen on his watch. You know what I'm saying? Like not looking out for immigrants, not on his watch. A whole ass
Right.
cop city, not in this state, not
Yeah.
here. I can't pick even a red area. I don't think that shit will fly even in Orange County or
Yeah.
somewhere else. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just certain things
Yeah.
that you know what I'm saying. If you stand for certain things, you're not really about to let grow legs in your backyard. And I think knowing that Atlanta has become such a beacon for Black life, has become such a beacon for Black economic success and
Yeah, it's like the black Mecca. Like niggas talk about Atlanta like the black Mecca. You feel me?
we lost Tulsa. Then our eyes, shifted to growing up. It was all Chocolate City, DC. And then over by the time we got into our old upper adolescence and adulthood, our eyes
It's
was
all
on
about
everybody
Atlanta.
black people. You know what I'm saying? So now, I like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Like that is
Yeah, so
there's so many incongruences. It's just kind of hard to fathom that. Like you said, and like you were pointing out when I jumped in, two different mayors. You know what I'm
black
saying? Have a lot
mayors.
of themselves with that as though it makes sense for what Atlanta has come to be for so many people.
And I mean, I'm gonna be honest. They did made a little bit of money off of it, right? They've received this, and this is where capitalism plays too much of a role, too big of a role, and how politics function. Because you got many major corporations, you got AT&T, you got Microsoft, all of these major corporations that are also invested in building Cop City. Right, so we know that it's some money that then went their way to support it because it's completely outside of the messaging that black people want to hear when it relate to police officers. So we understand Cop City is this $90 million facility, 300 something acres, 86 something acres that they'll use. Right, of course, with that we see major protests. We see a lot of people like having major issue with what's going on. Like we said, the brother got killed. Manuel got killed in January. But the state of those protests though is actually taking a very dangerous turn. And I wish we would have talked about it before because now because where it's at now it's a lot worse. And what's happening is you said what?
Shout out to Chris for popping in, but you were saying what's happening
Oh,
is what?
yeah. Shout out to Chris. So, because what's happening now is the protesters are actually getting hit with RICO and terrorist charges,
Yeah.
right? They are literally using every little bit of like legal maneuvering to get at all, like everybody that's been a part of any protest, right? The bail funds individuals, they've actually charged them with money laundering and all of those type of things.
Come on.
So it's like
Come on.
what? So what we
Mutual aid is money laundering? Okay.
Yeah, bailing out protesters is racketeering and money laundering, right? And so, and now we're gonna talk more about those RICO charges, but from the standpoint of the people that's pushing back against it, like they not gaining a lot of ground. So what they did recently is they created petitions because there's a Georgia law that's like if you create a petition to get a certain amount of signatures, then you can actually create a referendum to where the people can come in and vote in that referendum. The problem with that is that the mayor of Atlanta, Andre Dickens, he's not really he ain't really with it. Right, he's more so trying to play with he's being accused of playing both sides, while like really trying to appease and appeal to his black demographic, but at the same time supporting and really riding with Cop City. So Raphael Warnock wrote him a letter because he was concerned that the politicians in Atlanta were using the same laws, the same signature verification laws that they used to disenfranchise black voters. They was using it to undermine these signatures. And Raphael Warnock wrote Andre Dickens a letter like, "Hey, I'm concerned about what I'm hearing coming out of Atlanta, big dog." So Andre write a letter back telling him that let me just go ahead and read the article here. It says Dickens' comment came in a letter to Senator Raphael Warnock, who had written to the mayor in mid-September and raised questions about the city's use of signature verification, a practice Georgia Democrats have previously criticized as problematic to validate the referendum. The reason why they criticize it as problematic because these are the type that signature verification and other techniques is what people like Brian Kemp used to undermine voters in 2020 and undermine voters in 2022, etc. Right? On September 11th, organizers submitted around 116,000 signatures supporting a referendum on the police training facility, double the number needed to get the referendum on the ballot. The deadline for submitting the signatures is the subject of an ongoing legal battle in which the city has argued that the entire referendum effort is invalid. Now, y'all know I'm the nigga that's like, we gotta use government, we gotta work. This is where Toya and them be like, nigga, shut up. Be- because the people, like the people in Atlanta government, the Atlanta City Council, the Atlanta Mayor's office, clearly, right? They're flat out saying y'all can't do that. Not and just creating a legal, and the reason why they're creating these legal questions is because they know they can draw out a legal battle. And if you
Right.
can draw out a legal battle, you can do everything you need to do before and so then by the time they able to actually go to court and get it figured out, like they already got it built. They already passed everything necessary. They
I
already
mean, but
broke
that's what I'm
ground.
saying. This is these are the trade-offs you make. These are negotiations you make. This is the quid pro quo, the give and the take you participate in when you are a career politician, right? When you have decided that this is going to be your direction and trajectory, you're not really here to be a public servant. I mean, I guess in a roundabout way, but this is a part of an institution you want to be a part of forever. You start making deals now that allow for you to substantiate your future. So, right, I'm going to go ahead and do these things and allow that because I'm just a young mayor. One day I want to be a senator. One day I want to be a representative. One day I want to run for it. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what I really hate, and that's why we talked about one why skin folk ain't kin folk when it comes to representational politics, and why you can't just wave a
Mm,
black person at me and get me to vote for him no more. And two, why I'm always skeptical and suspicious of participating in anything that reflects top down politics
right.
because you get into them or you participate into them and you enter into them and you don't get to be who you said you was going to be. You end up having to play that game or negotiate common sense shit that you and your constituents probably agreed on at some
The
point. Well, the shit that y'all need to be rocking with. Here you
right.
go, you got the votes, and now that you got the position, being able to, you know what I'm saying, step back on your word. And so I just don't know that. And I'm not gonna hold you. I don't know what he ran on. Maybe this been him all along, been all for the police and this and that. Because we know the mayor of New York was the police, and they still voted for his ass. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know enough about to say one thing or another what the issues are near and dear to him, but it goes back to just understanding like it's an easy equation. You run a city with a bunch of police. Police and niggas don't get along. Particularly now equals I probably shouldn't double down and back up the police. And I should at least respect the ability for people to protest those decisions without, you know what I'm saying, fear of retribution. Because logically they probably don't feel some type of way about this shit. Come on now.
I mean, a part of the reason though he was able to kind of get by without this being like a major sticking point in the election is primarily because one, we was dealing with Trump era politics, right? We dealing with, especially in Georgia, you feel me? So we're in a situation where uh, moderate liberals look better than they used to, right? Like moderate, like you just kind of expect that, like if you can hit the right points, I'm rocking with you. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But at the same time, there were a lot of, like I was saying, black neighborhood advocacy groups that actually was in support of Cop City, and that's probably and that's because of the relationship that they have with reform. But regardless of what he ran on, this is where he at now, and this is what we find extremely problematic. So we say here that Mayor, according to Von Martin, who is the deputy chief of campaigns for the Center for Popular Democracy, said that Mayor Dickens has been trying to prevent a vote on Cop City from the very beginning. Now that he's being called out for it, he's hiding behind a court appeal that he filed. He filed, right? So he's trying to act like, okay, yeah, we're trying to do right by the people and everything. At the same time, act like using the courts and using the government to actively work against the will of the protesters and the people. The Martin goes on to say that he can't have it both ways. If Mayor Dickens actually believes in democracy and respects the voice of his constituents, he should simply drop his appeal and begin counting the petitions. Right? Just simple. What he says in his letter to Raphael Warnock is it's not an election. Yes, because you're not allowing the signatures on the to actually cause or trigger a referendum. It's not an election because you're not letting it happen. This is what he says to Raphael Warnock. This is not an election, not yet. People are not and have not been asked to vote. They're asking you to let them vote, brother. Like,
Like, and I
this
mean,
is
I think it's just so funny that the same system that validated your existence in the position that you're in is the same one that you pretend just don't mean shit and don't matter and that you don't have to abide by. Like, I think in a democracy, it makes a lot of sense. If you're not willing and people in power aren't willing to say, let's hear everybody else's voice about it and let's vote about it, that the people should be like, I think we have enough interest in this particular issue in a way that's going to influence the jurisdiction that you have to send, we're going to send the referendum to you. Like, damn. Like, I just, democracy is such, what do you call it? Empty calories.
Empty
Like,
calories.
but you know what, we eating it up and taking it in, and oh, I get to vote, and oh, this and that, and yada yada. Georgia just went through a whole back and forth where they was, I think, fighting about whether or not you can bring niggas drinks, bev, and food in lines to come vote. Like,
They so
y'all,
so they just lost that. They just lost that. What's the name? The Supreme Court case.
they lost it. I thought they just got it back. I thought I'm pretty sure the decision got overturned or
No, no,
reversed
no.
into a.
That's what I mean. Yeah, they
Gotcha,
now are
gotcha, gotcha.
able to do the things that they did, like give
But
niggas
y'all
water.
fighting so mightily to protect the institution of democracy and everything. It looks like, but when niggas actually have something they want you to put on the ballot, you know what I'm saying? Like, whatever. Like, people should be able to vote about like bridges being built and whether or not we gonna support, sports franchises and
All
refurbishing
of that.
their stadiums and shit. And they should be able to say like this big, completely city altering presence should or should not be here because it's
Right.
going to change the fabric of life, the future of my families. And I don't want to cut to, directly in front of you, but we talk about the implications on indigenous and black people directly. This is not just, oh, cop cities means more cops. They don't drive 15 minutes to my neighborhood. No, the fences is touching.
Mm-hmm.
They make yards together. You know what I'm saying? Like, these people ought to be able to have some type of say because, I mean, let's hearken upon the Henry Louis Gateses of the world, right? Renowned
Exactly.
historians, people who have contributed to the critical cultural and political landscape of this country for multiple decades, and he was outside his own house and got harassed by the boys. You know what I'm saying? And a thousand other examples of it. But like, come on now, we know how this story's gonna go. Like,
And
stop.
I think and when you look at his words, I think the reason why this is extremely striking, is because we in an election season. You feel me? Like we are literally in a like at a time where people are about to be asking for ballots. Like they better be asking for your vote. So when somebody like Andre Dickens, I want to say his name clearly, Atlanta black male mayor Andre Dickens told black man Senator Raphael Warnock that we cannot allow people from either end of the political spectrum to conflate this effort. Either end, bro, it's only one. Like this is the
Right, right,
empty
bro.
political rhetoric that we hear from these people. There is no other end. There is no both sides. The only people that's saying, "Hey, we don't want this," and they're loud about it, is the people on the left. So this either end stuff is foolishness. But look, this is what he says: standing in front of your local grocery store to collect signatures from customers who may be residents, while commendable, is vastly different from registering to vote and casting a ballot. Bro, do you think we stupid? Do you think
How?
Raphael Warnock is stupid?
My question is how? Nigga, it's literally, and shout out to the bar reloaded in the comments, but people literally go to the grocery store to get people registered to vote. People literally go to outside grocery stores whenever it's a bill on the referendum, and you know what I'm saying, you people who are like have records or living in, like, I definitely engage those people on a regular basis. Like, hey, I'm just trying to make an honest $20-$40 an hour. You mind signing my little document about this referendum, this issue, that issue, and then we got drop off ballot polling places. So how is this any different than the election part where you are conjuring up voters and giving them accessible places to go and cast a ballot? Bro, it's the same thing. It is
So
campaigning and canvassing. Huh?
no, go ahead. No, yeah, go ahead. Finish.
I thought you were about to tell me it is a difference. I'm like, bro, it's just
No.
campaigning and canvassing. It's footwork. It's grassroots organizing that allows for the issues to be heard. Because again, these are the same people saying, go take it to the ballot box. If you that mad, don't be in the streets. Don't be like Detroit tearing up shit. Don't be like these other cities when something happens that don't go your way, you want to vote about it. Talk about it. Tell us about it. Let us hear about it. And here we go with our fucking cruel optimism that they've given us. Just literally problematic. And we show up every time. And that's why you and I go back and forth. Me, you, and Lee go back and forth. And Terry, every single time it's time to cast the ballot. Because nigga, for what?
Yeah, I'm still gonna stand on it though, because I think what's happening though is what he's, even though he's saying that getting signatures isn't the same thing as registering people to vote, it is the same thing as registering people to vote when it's a referendum. When if you get a certain amount of signatures, it can trigger a vote. That's it. So it's
That
the same
and
thing as registering. Like you
that
literally
and
need all these signatures to get
what
it.
a bait and switch to be like, hey, you want to sign this referendum? Also, shit, this thing might go somewhere. Are you registered to vote? Like, come on now. It's
Yeah.
too easy.
So it's frustrating to hear shit like that, especially somebody like myself who actually advocates for civic engagement, but you have a mayor of a majority black town, or excuse me, city, Like, let me. We up there saying majority black. The black city,
Right.
Atlanta, is telling politically engaged and politically connected black people that your form of political engagement, oh, that's not what. Like, come on, bro.
I mean, and I think that's also sad in a world where, I think it's like contradicting messages that you give into Georgians specifically, right? Think about the last few election cycles, how much work has been put into prodding and
Right,
pumping them up to participate in the like tentacles of the state and of the law
right.
and of policy making in very particular ways, right? Shout out to Stacey Abrams. Can't go with talking about Georgia and not bring up her name, because her and the swaths of people who she galvanized to go out there and get people to the ballot boxes is why we have a Raphael Warnock able to send letters to the Atlanta mayor to
You know what I
draw some of
mean?
these, ask some of these questions. You know what I'm saying? So they didn't sit up there and got people convinced that voting is the way to go, and voting creates change, and this is how our voice gonna be heard, and the proper people can be in the proper places, and this and that. And then all of a sudden, when I get civically engaged and I hear about issues that affect my community, and I'm not, telling the boys, telling my niggas, telling the folks on the block, you know what I'm saying, let's go set some shit out. I'm like, nah, I'm gonna sign this and see what's gonna come. And I can't wait to vote for this issue. And I can't wait to vote for these people and elect the proper people in a position. And you pull the rug up under their feet and it's like, nah, we just playing. Like, what are people supposed to think? Those are the games that get played in front of people's faces, and you wonder why they don't, beat down the ballot boxes to go vote for a particular person in 2 to 4 years. It's because for what? They're not seeing the materialization in consistent ways of their actions, their behaviors, and their changed mindsets about the system.
Yeah,
If y'all
it's
are
like
you in here real quick and you haven't hit that thumbs up, go ahead, because I know we getting deep into this Cop City shit, and there's so much conversation left. But make sure y'all go ahead and hit that thumbs up if y'all been sitting in here. My bad, plug. Go ahead.
nah, you good. And I think it's one thing to notice is it's a lot of bullshit on the internet, right? It's a lot of bullshit on YouTube. You feel me? So support real shit. You know what I mean? Not to sound mean about it, but but I mean, cause y'all just getting some of this Andre Dickens smoke, cause like this is it, like these people undermine my argument about why we still need to do this, especially when Toya and I are repeatedly going back and forth about what voter enthusiasm. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
What turnout can look like what it's going to take to get more young people to the ballots. You feel me? Because I still feel like Donald Trump is a possible threat. So just because Donald Trump is like straight trash, we can't. The people,
A couple weeks
the
ago, he
people.
wasn't willing to even admit that. A couple weeks ago, he just knew Donald Trump had no hope. But you heard it
I
here.
mean, listen. I'm still like, is he a threat? Yeah. Like, is it possible? Yes. Right. I do think it's possible. But I think
what good. You told the truth and you were about to keep going. Just tell the truth and keep going. You don't have to sit. You don't have to dissect the conversation we already had. Right. We don't have to do that. But so let us tarry with things in front of us, plug, because you backtracking, you getting lost in that.
Let me give you your credit, right? Let me give, because like let me validate some of your argument right now, because like this is the evidence that would do it, right? this is the evidence that would do it. Like, so when somebody's saying we need to be civically engaged, and then the people that we are asking them to vote for are saying shit like, well, yeah, signing people up isn't actually voting. My nigga, it's a petition. What do you mean?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so that type of shit gets in the way of people being invigorated. Like, not fucking with Donald Trump ain't enough. Shifting the goalpost. Really, that's really a true Scotsman fallacy, because he's what a true Scotsman, non sequitur. It could be. It's a long line of fallacies that this man just sent to this sitting senator.
Red herrings, nigga, all types of things.
All type of shit, right? But again, with us going into 2024, like, we need, in order to beat Donald Trump, niggas need turnout. Period. This ain't gonna cut it. And especially right after Georgia just turned blue.
Yeah.
Like, it's like purple. I say purple. I ain't willing to give Georgia blue all the way. You know what I'm saying? But it's purple. Like, Georgia finally became competitive for liberal politicians, and this is how niggas is moving.
It's trying to be it wants to be the progressive beacon of the South, but shit like this is not gonna allow that to happen.
It's not gonna allow it to happen. And what's even crazier, speaking of Stacey Abrams and Atlanta voices in politics, everybody's favorite black rapping moderate, Michael Render, aka Killer Mike, had a few interesting things to say about Cop City, and like, you know, usually the chop up has had smoke for for brother Killer Mike. But this is really more of a discussion piece that he presented us with today, right? So let's get this play, and we gonna talk about it on the other side. Let's go.
I speak. So I'll give my probably first and final statement. They didn't put $100 million into this, and part of war is knowing what you have the war chest for and what you do not. My first job is to
Hold on, hold on.
You
I
trying
gotta
to find
get
the spot?
yeah. I'm just
Why
trying to
you
find the
find the
spot.
spot? Shout out to Donnell for keeping the footwork, recognizing, you know what I'm saying? Say something about some humble pie being serious. And so we definitely want to celebrate and love that. While you looking for the look for the clip, to my people who listen to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, I owe y'all an apology. I'm a little late on some of those edits, so I owe y'all some content. It's coming. So thank y'all for being patient and keeping it cool with us. This is also a good time, like I said at the top of this conversation. The real Andre Rose on Instagram, but the homie Andre, who's constantly in the comments, constantly talking and tapping in with us, is the one who gave us the idea with this video specifically to get us thinking about Cop City in a more targeted way. So if you got anything, drop it in that DM over on Instagram. You never know what type of conversation it'll conjure up and get us thinking about and talking about. So don't miss an opportunity to share the stuff that's on your timeline, the stuff that's on your radar that you think it might be good for us to come in here and talk about on the show. Like that's
All
always an
right.
option. Got it?
Yeah, let's get it.
Let's listen.
people have said I've been silent on it. Well, I just didn't want to talk to y'all. Kalonji is someone I know and trust, and he's someone I'll speak. So I'll give my probably first and final statement. They didn't put $100 million into this, and part of war is knowing what you have the war chest for and what you do not. My first job is to take care of my children, my wife, because I've given my responsibility to God to them by saying, hey, I want this woman, I want these children, I want this, and my grandfather would say, my job is to take care of y'all, and I have to take care of them, and in taking care of them, what I've understand is I can't chase every fight. I can't chase every fight. When I see $100 million project coming down and then get passed, I know that there's not much I can do as the one radical rapper, right? But what I do
Radical.
know is there's always a chink in the armor. There's always an addition to, there's always something I can do. We had at one time, and I think it probably after Kasim, it got weak. But there was a woman named Alice Johnson, there was a white woman who was a mentor of mine who introduced me to Reverend James Orange, who was a confidant and an organizer with Dr. King. Introduced me to the Atlanta has a civilian board that oversaw the police officers. I'm forgetting the exact name now, but I got another writer hooked up with them. They need to be stronger. They once were stronger. They could bring cops up for review. They could raise hell. They could punish. We need to, because I don't. I just frankly, just my only statement is I don't think we're going to stop Cop City. I don't think once $100 million is in play, I don't think we're going to shut it down unless Atlantans. Now, if you got Atlantans, you got black folks from Atlanta, DeKalb, coming up from Macon, Columbus. If you got them standing in front of, but that's not what I've seen. Not to say there aren't black folks on the scene, but it's if it looked like the Rodney King riots, I would say okay, we stand a chance. But that's not what it looks like now. And the average everyday working class black person I meet in Atlanta, that's not the first question they're
Okay.
asking me.
Okay.
We heard it from Killer Mike. What you thinking?
So it's a few now, and y'all in the chat. I want y'all to know. I want to know what y'all think about what Killer Mike just said. It was a few interesting things that kind of stood out to what he was saying. The first thing I'm gonna be petty. The first thing I'm gonna point out is when he said like that lone radical rapper. Bro, I don't know what radicals are shaking hands with Brian Keith. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no.
I rock with Killer Mike, and and what he does. I have criticisms and all, but yo, there's no radicals shaking it. No leftist radicals, no black radicals shaking hands with
I
Brian
mean,
and
and this
kicking it
kind of
with Brian
goes,
Kemp.
this kind of dovetails just briefly with the conversation we was having about what we want from our older rappers as they age. And I think we want our older rappers like in the mix, having these important conversations, pushing the envelope. You know what I'm saying? Like really being clear and precise about the roles, like of revolution and like how shit plays out. So I can respect him, tapping in on that part, but don't lie about how you move it. You know what I'm saying? Like, and if you're gonna be radical and you're gonna be countercultural and you're gonna represent that through and through. You know what I'm saying? Find ways to take this like anti-fuck the police stance out here, getting it, whatever. Have that translate into how you support activists, how you get behind different people's pursuits and different initiatives. You know what I'm saying? Like we've talked about No Name before. You know what I'm saying? Like you really mad your niggas in the pen, niggas in jail, whatever. Well, she giving access to books and shit. You know what I'm saying? She making sure people who, you know what I'm saying, don't have access to reading literature or who, you know what I'm saying, are not free, but still want to read, have access to these types of resources. So that's the type of shit we want you signal boosting and getting behind and really, you know what I'm saying, materializing for us conversations with Brian Kemp and excuses about why it's not your turn right now. Like, I mean, in some ways, and I know we're gonna get there, I can respect what he has to say. I just, as a person who was just like, as the only one who's out here, well, you're a terrible example for the ones who's supposed to come after you, bro. Because like you be faking and shaking.
So let me ask you this, Toya. In terms of us being in an election season, and because I kind of feel Killer Mike to a degree, right? I think so where I do feel like he makes a pretty valid point is when he's saying if it looked like the Rodney King riots, we may had a chance. Because I think what he's lamenting is the I guess the modern nature of protesting and the non-violent approach of being out there, which is kind of, it's ironic because he's criticizing it, and even me myself is critical of like the more traditional protest, the non-violent protest in the vein of Dr. King and all of that. How like today they're cool with that, but at the same time they being called terrorists for doing that, right? But I think what I think is that I can agree that when you have this much institutional support, as long as like the capitalist support, like he said, $100 million, it's probably gonna go up to about 150, to be honest, 150 million. But like niggas protesting in ways that make people comfortable isn't going to stop something that has that much support behind it, financially and, you know what I'm saying, institutionally. So the question then starts to become like, does these methods of protest, like, can they even be effective for shit like this? You know what I'm saying? Like, or is this too big of a thing for protests to be able to actually undermine?
I mean, I think, we have whole ass police officers that fear, you know what I'm saying, not being aligned with the police, which then makes them vulnerable. You know what I'm saying? There's people who are trying to do their job and make them feel like they alienate the cops. So we have whole presidents who are not willing to be like, the police got to change. You know what I'm saying? Like, so much so the whole presidential candidates, doesn't matter what side of the ticket you on, are just like back the blue. In so many words, we have to support the police officers. There's like, Joe Biden refuses to be like, nah, police on some bullshit. Donald Trump definitely wasn't saying that shit, and Barack Obama wouldn't even go that far as saying that shit. He had issues, had reasons, invited little black kids to the White House that looked just like him, and whatever, you know what I'm saying, wanted to do all these gestures, and had a lot of about to say about Trayvon Martin and how he looked like, but you know what I'm saying, never being like, but the police is bad. The police in America need to change. And so, I can't be surprised that, you know what I mean, they get the support that they have and that they feel undefeatable when you have whole institutions that out-institution them that are not willing to be like, nah, some shit got to change in order for us to have a functional, progressive America. So, like, they do come off as very undefeatable. I do worry about, like, even in the imagery that Killer Mike is, portraying, where a whole bunch of people get together like they did with the riots, Rodney King, and show up against the police. You mean these new police? These shit that you don't like police. These are like,
yeah, I actually think that
hard. You know what I'm saying? To fathom any of that, because we know how the police roll these days. We're gonna go ahead and drop the word here. They roll like the what? The military. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? They got their tools, they got their tactics, they got their techniques. So it's wicked.
I think you're right. I actually think I take that back. I actually think that you're right. And where I thought I agreed with Killer Mike, like, nah, if it was like some Rodney King type shit, that would actually exacerbate the desire for Cop City. Like, I mean, because again, though, if you think of how they protested now and how they treat it, how they using shit like RICO, how they over criminalizing what they doing. Like, if it was, if they was any more serious, right, or any more what we would say militant, right, then it would actually create more of a desire for more policing in 2023, because they don't see issues the same way. Like what was happening in the 90s, like race relations, even though they haven't gotten better, there's a perception that it has. Like
Yeah.
the when they, I mean, we go back about 10 years, they were trying to say it was like a post-racial America because Obama stopped.
Right.
So because we don't like the struggles that we deal with, and the oppression isn't seen as bad as it was back then, that people don't understand that violence. People don't understand that frustration and how it play out in what we call riots and what we call or what they call like violent protests. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
They don't get
let
that.
me drop this tea real quick. After 2020, like, what do you think they practicing at the training facility? You think they practicing for safer pullovers? You think they are, getting ready? They're
Well, they have a whole city, Toya. So they could be pulling over fake people.
Sure. You know what they practicing? How to respond to civil unrest.
Yeah.
Because they understand that that's the name of the game these days, and that they have every intention on continuing to do the type of shit that make people want to jump up out their seat. So that now they're just a little bit more ready. Now it's about tactics and techniques to get ready for shit like what happened up in Detroit earlier this week when they started rioting and looting and stealing shit because the outcome of a police investigation didn't go the way a police involved shooting didn't go the way it was supposed to go. You know what I'm saying? We see so they're practicing for that. Right. This is why we can't just afford, because we don't got no new tactics. They got new shit. They got new tactics. They got new resources. They got new chitties. They got all that shit. We have nothing, but we shall overcome hopes, dreams, aspirations, and a clear kind of proof. You know what I'm saying? That the shit not gonna pan out. The second thing they up there practicing for is to respond to mass shootings. And you know why they're doing that? Because they have no intention on getting rid of these guns. So Uvalde happened. Every other mass shooting has happened. They have no responses or no answers. So now they need to refine their tactics and techniques to go get somebody after a tragedy has already occurred. Not to stop it, not to prevent it, not to get more guns off the street, not to do the rest of that shit. They finna keep pumping guns into our neighborhood, so they got to be better responsive in terms of how to strategize, because you've already embarrassed them.
Right.
That's how
so that actually, the point that you made actually helps us transition into the next part of the conversation, because there's a few things before we get out of here we want to talk about. And we ain't trying to keep y'all too long. It's Friday. Niggas trying to kick it, get out, whatever.
Yeah, I see I can't breathe. Fighting for my life over.
So it's a few things we want to point out that in terms of why they're protesting, so people can kind of understand the circumstances. And the first that I want to point out is the environmental concerns. The environmental concerns. Let me zoom in on this because it's a little small so the folks can see it. Folks at home can see it. There we go. All right. So this article here it's the Columbia Climate School, talks about how environmentalists should oppose Cop City and defend the city of Atlanta. Why is South River Forest a green space dubbed the lungs of Atlanta? So South River Forest is the green area where that they supposed to be taking over to teach these cops, excuse me.
I wish they teach the kids. They don't want to do that. They're taking money away from that. Teach the cops.
Right. A green space dubbed. This place is called the Lungs of Atlanta. Where they're building this facility is called the Lungs of Atlanta, right? 85-acre, 90 million public safety training campus for Atlanta's police department. The land was originally inhabited by Muskogee Creek Nation before their forced displacement, right? It's I mean, I guess you can't say it's poetic. What would you call it? It's only right that this new police training facility full to train oppressors would have been taken by an indigenous group it's only right. Before their forced displacement in the early 1800s, it also operated as let's go through this genealogy of settler colonialism. It also operated as a plantation. And most recently a prison farm.
Let me look up something, because what's the name of it? Is it Lake Charles that's like been killing everybody?
I'm not sure. You talking about in
Lake,
Atlanta,
no, I think that's in Louisiana. It's some one of them
Louisiana?
lakes out south where motherfuckers be going to vacation to or whatever, and people fall in it and die. People drown in it. It's like constantly whatever, whatever, whatever. And I think it's in Georgia, and I could be wrong, but I feel like I'm right. And if I'm wrong, I'm gonna try to see the game. But the ancestors down there is not fucking with y'all. They not
They're
playing.
not.
How you
They're
like? And
not.
that's I just pray for the downfall of this place, and I pray that every ancestor that lost their life or who didn't lose their life, but was made to be socially dead, who's literally was walking around the living dead because their souls, their spirits have been beat up on and crushed on so bad from shit like settler colonialism and the transatlantic slave trade and plantation politics. I'm just like, and just existing in those spaces. I hope to God that they are being haunted. You know what I'm saying? By the ancestors, by the spirits of people who lost their lives there. Because that shit, like, can't prosper on the same land that y'all doing this crazy shit to. Like, what?
Again, stolen from them. If y'all just now joining us,
Wicked.
Where Cop City is being built, that land
Wicked.
was, and it's like all the land here was stolen, but like this specifically, Muskogee specific was stolen from Muskogee people. They built a plantation on it. They had a modern plantation on it more recently where they used prison farm for incarcerated labor. So already, like, this is just the legacy of how they've utilized this land. But also, in DeKalb County, DeKalb County, which comprises the neighborhoods surrounding South River Forest, the population is predominantly black. Most residents live at or below the poverty level and have some of the country's highest rates of poverty, asthma, and diabetes. Why is the asthma and diabetes portion important when we talk about the environmental aspect? Of course, poverty, right? But the asthma and specifically the asthma issue gets even worse when they're removing the trees.
Yeah.
They're removing this area is called the lungs of Atlanta. There's an area right next to it where people already suffer from asthma, and they're about to start construction and have vehicles and all other type of pollutants, you know what I'm saying, in the air that stem from this joint to impact the black community that's not only poor but already deal with shit like asthma and diabetes. This is where like all of these aspects of institutional oppression kind of cross over each other, environmentally, health wise, and social wise, when it comes to the safety that we deal with the police. You know what I'm saying, with the police. So this isn't just a question of like, oh my God, like they're training these evil cops. No, like literally where they're building this training facility,
sucking the life out of that city, yo. Like the
harm
literal life,
the
like the
environment.
heartbeat, not just the upbeat black life and people being like, no, the life, the biological life out of that place. By the way, I said, like Charles, I was talking about Lake Lanier, which has been a place that since 1994, more than 200 people have died at the most popular lake in the Southeast. A 23-year-old man drowned last Saturday after slipping and falling off a dock in Georgia's Lake Lanier, according to the Georgia Department of Natural Resources. And that was on September 8th, 2023. When I tell you I said on Twitter, it seemed like every month and a half, some other tragedy, somebody died, somebody hit their head, somebody can't fall in the water, can't get out of it, drown to death. Pick away. And so I hope them same spirits that's governing over Lake Lanier. Because I think it's very important to remember about Lake Lanier that I think it might be a man-made lake that used to be slave ground or like a plantation or some shit like that. It has some historical baggage to it. So listen, the earth don't play about itself. The people who were supposed to be the governors and the inhabitants, the true inhabitants of certain spaces and certain parts of the earth, like their spirits and their legacies don't just poof disappear because you marginalize them, because you kill them, because you do. They right there, baby. And I wish nothing but brokenness and the opposite of success for everything that happens on the grounds of Cop City, because the lungs of Atlanta, like that, I wouldn't want to I believe too much in the spirits to even play with anything like that. You said it's called what? We can't build anything here. Lungs of Atlanta, like, but common sense ain't.
And lastly, what I want to say about the environmental impact is because the reason why it's called the lungs of Atlanta is forests in Atlanta remove about 19 million pounds of air pollutants each year, and the South River Forest is considered one of the largest unspoiled areas left in the Atlanta metro area, which they about to destroy. And lastly,
Yeah,
environmental justice scholars have long pointed out the role of police violence in normalizing environmental racism, which disproportionately impacts black and brown communities. Black people are 3 times more likely to be killed by the police and die from asthma than white people. So that's the environmental impact that's being protested against. And actually, the brother that was killed actually was an environmental protester.
Yeah.
So they wasn't even out there about, it wasn't just the cop shit. It was like, yo, this is what y'all doing to our environment. The next aspect that's being protested is the militarization of police departments. Right? There's a program that allows, I think it's called the 1033 program, that allows for police departments to receive any leftover military gear. So any weapons, ballistic vests, helmets, whatever, all of the riot gear, all of that, right? Local police departments can get that gear from the government. What is the problem with that? Why do we have an issue with militarization? Well, militarization is one of the key things that gets in the way of actual reform, because that's what's happening. When they're talking about reforming, but in turn, what they actually end up doing is militarizing the government or the police department, and that's actually a pretty common thing. Let me pull up this article here called from the Harvard Gazette, Why Police Resist Reforms to Militarization. Jessica Katzenstein, an Inequality in America fellow who got her PhD in anthropology, has been analyzing police militarization in an effort to show how and why departments are resisting changes. Put simply, police militarization consists of decades-old federal government practice of making military equipment available to state and local enforcement departments. The initial intent was to help arm police in the war on drugs and later to prevent terror attacks. Mm-hmm. Many scholars argue that police militarization includes SWAT teams, paramilitary teams and tactics, military bureaucracies, and militarized ways of understanding crime and criminality, in which the default is for officers to see non-officers as potential threats or enemies. Yeah. I had to move it over. My fault. Let me move it over so y'all can see. So y'all can see that there. So it's clearly saying here that what scholars have recognized is that when there's a focus on militarization, it ends up putting the people in harm's way, because the police don't see the people as like they neighbors. They see them as enemy combatants. They see them as insurgents. And real quick before I get you to chime in, Toya, there's also research that clearly shows that militarization causes an increase in police violence. Let me zoom out so y'all can see this. Because all of these is old. All these different ways these websites look and put their information. But this study here, militarization and police violence, the case of the 1033 program, is in the abstract. What they're saying is that the purpose of this study is to figure out, does militarization lead to increased violent behavior among officers? Right? Very simple. Simple question. And there's a very simple answer to that question. The answer is yes, because the results show the receipt of more military equipment increases both the expected number of civilians killed by police and the change in civilian deaths. Receiving no military equipment corresponds with 0.287 expected civilian killings, and receiving the maximum amount corresponds with 0.656 killings. In other words, moving from the minimum to the maximum expenditure values on average increases civilian deaths by 129%. Militarizing police, giving them access to military equipment, like the 1033 program does, puts constituents and citizens in harm's freaking way. Period. Yeah. This is what empirical data shows. So when they say that we're getting reform and changing the way police function, no, we're making police worse with these facilities, because what they're gonna do is they're gonna train like they in the army. That's what you need a whole city for. What you need a whole fake city for.
Right.
right? That means that you're creating scenarios that you got to respond to, and you're trying to practice responding to those scenarios as opposed to understanding the community better, working on better community engagement, working on better citizen engagement. How do we create a better relationship with the people that's not focused on crime and punishment?
Yeah.
But no, we get $100 million facilities. Go ahead, tell you.
I mean, this unfortunately is unsurprising, and also shout out to Columbus and Miss Ma'am in the comments who have shaped and rounded out what we've been talking about with Lake Lanier. So make sure you check there. I know I wasn't tripping. Columbus said you're getting a little spooky, but Lake Lanier is backup water from the Beaufort Dam on the Chattahoochee River. Miss Ma'am says it was predominantly a black city that went through riots. Residents were forced out of them, and people flooded. And forced out, and then people flooded, and still the city is still standing. I'm sorry, the still standing city. Sorry, the water flooded the still standing
They still
city
stay in the city, yeah.
graveyards, right? So, like I said, the spirits of our ancestors are there. Back up to militarism and how I feel about it. It's not surprising, and I think it's rather sad because one of the specific demands that were being made about, what if we got to deal with the police, if police inevitable is the argument, if they're always going to be here, what they could be doing, and shit like mental health training, like increasing the amount of time they're in training, like not even just increasing the amount of time they're in training, but the type of training. I want to know about the curriculum. Like you can have all these resources, and you have all this shit, but I just like it's very evident what you're learning there, and it's evident
Mm-hmm.
where your investments are not. We ask for people who specialize in mental health, both in order to de-escalate a lot of the situations that happen, and to grapple with people who are often targeted by the police because they're in crisis and not because they're actually people who are intentionally trying to violate the law. And instead, you like military grade equipment. The thing that pisses me off about that is that it's literally against the law, like it's against the Constitution for the military to act in like domestic situations. Like the military literally can't pop in and do shit if it's happening with citizens on American soil. So they was like, we'll just do the next best thing and make the people who can act be just like the military. This shit is exhausting.
Yeah.
It's sad. It's frustrating because it's nothing but a big fucking shell game. And it goes back to the conversation we were having previously, where it's like it does feel like ain't nothing we can do because as soon as we think we got the police and their tactics figured out, y'all up the ante and make them damn in the military. You make them paramilitary. You give them resources and you give them shit. Y'all don't get guns off the street. You anticipate that the average citizen has a gun that's gonna be able to blow your ass away, and you want to try to meet force with force instead of like taking away the heavy artillery from the average citizen so that you don't need to have the same type of shields. You know what I'm saying? Like it just seems too easy
Yeah.
to resolve other issues that then have created and necessitated this one as opposed to beefing up what you feel like you need to respond to cities who are outcrying for you to be partners with them and not opponents.
Not
And
opponents.
for whatever reason, that has still been what people have reversed to and relied on because they feel like that's what is needed to keep these cities in order. But no, you want to talk about all the looting and all the stealing and all the crime that's happening and how crime is up, which is an inflated and bloated statistic that conservatives try to use as a scaremongering tactic. You want to talk about all that shit, but you have done nothing to rehabilitate these cities besides give the police everything they ever want to need, and that's so stupid.
Because that's $90 million that could have went to many of the impoverished areas in Atlanta. That could have went to many of like the what they call it, the food, not food deserts, but like families that are at risk that are at risk of starvation or hunger.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like
We literally have a country where the federal government is about to like fucking shut down, which means people's SNAP benefits as early as Monday morning will not be available to them. And they don't have resources in local places like Atlanta, or at least not really solid ones that can really meet the need and respond to when other parts of the government are being on some weird shit and filling the gaps. But you know who's good? I bet you know whose vending machines is filled up and shit. Got snacks galore. I bet the break room is all tidy and got shit in the refrigerator. Cop City. With their little fake pretend city is probably little fake pretend apartments with food and refrigerators and shit like that because they really want to, show what it looks like to go inside of a home in a community that's already disparaged and really fuck some shit up. So I don't know, like maybe my imagination is going wild, but I'm just so frustrated in knowing that the misallocation and the misspending of money. Why do you think we need more militarized police when the literal military is overfunded? So much so that they have extra shit to just give away. Right, to me, this whole conversation illuminates so much of what is wrong, from the environmental issues to the militarism, to the general police response, to the funding of police as opposed to other things that the demands have been there for. Like they play it in our face.
playing
I'm
in,
tired.
and this is and so we're gonna round it out by the last part we're gonna talk about is actually where it gets a lot worse. And this is what's going on with the protesters. We see what they protesting. We see why they protesting, right? The harm on the environment, the militarization of police, specifically in majority black areas, and where when we know that that's a recipe for disaster. But to round this thing out, we want to talk about the circumstances of the protesters in Atlanta right now, because they're getting fucked. Like, I mean, excuse my French, YouTube, but they're getting the short end. Like, I forget the short end of the stick. They giving them the whole stick. Okay. What what I mean by that is we kind of talked about it earlier, but what the protesters are dealing with right now is actually way far and beyond, you know what I mean, like the treatment that they should be getting, while this mayor is complaining about, oh, both sides doing whatever. You feel me? According to the Griot, well, really, Griot got it from AP. Trying to move this over real quick. 61 people have been indicted in Georgia on racketeering charges following a long-running state investigation into protests against a planned police fighter training facility in Atlanta. In the sweeping indictment released Tuesday, Republican Attorney General Chris Carr alleged the defendants are militant anarchists. The people protesting Cop City have been alleged to be militant anarchists. Who supported a violent movement that prosecutors trace to widespread 2020 racial justice protests. It's only the Georgia Attorney General can frame racial justice protests as a negative thing. Right? Like, that's not something that should be supported. No, that's just criminality that's coming out of protests for racial justice. Let's continue. Most of those indicted have already been charged over their alleged involvement in the movement. RICO charges carry a heavy potential sentence that can be added on top of the penalty for the underlying acts. Among the defendants, more than 36 people already facing domestic terrorism charges in connection to violent protests. 3 leaders of a bail fund previously accused of money laundering, and 3 activists previously charged with felony intimidation after authorities say they distributed flyers calling a state trooper a murderer for his involvement in the fatal shooting of a protester. Now look,
free speech.
I've never thought that Georgia should be like the beacon of how we should look at what political engagement should look like, or how a government can function correctly, right? I think this is fascism described as democracy, right? And so you have people like Donald Trump and others complaining that January 6th was a question of freedom of speech, but they ran up on the Capitol. These are people that are protesting, which is literally their constitutional right. They're protesting, right? And then there are no laws that can say who can bail who out. There's no laws that says that an organization can't come together and put money together to when Donald Trump and all of them was putting together money for to bail out the little shooter in up north, what's the little white man? Kyle Rittenhouse. Mm-hmm. They wasn't accused of money laundering
at all.
This is a perfect example of government corruption and like it at its finest. And the only reason this corruption is able to take place is because, one, white people, like racist whites, run most of the governments in the South. This nigga in Atlanta, the mayor in Atlanta, is getting paid. That's it. It's not about the people. This is what we should be talking about during an election. Let's not get caught up on the fact that Donald Trump is facing indictments. What we don't want to hear our politicians indicting Donald Trump. That's Fannie Willis' job. Exactly. That's Letitia James' job. You know what I'm saying? That's Jack Smith's job. Our politicians need to be talking about the ways in which places like, because Cop City, they don't just got a Cop City in Atlanta, they got a Cop City in Chicago.
Yeah, they all over the place. They're popping up all over the place.
They popping up over, right? Because the response to changing the governments or the policing has been, let's build them $100 million facilities. So so my question to you, Toya, right? As we're thinking about what this election should look like and what should matter, should this conversation, or actually let me phrase it like this. What would you want to hear from a politician discussing these issues, the militarization, and this new, because we're gonna call it what it is. It's an anti-woke police state. Because I wanted to say anti-black police state, but all police states are anti-black. So I think we'll be slightly redundant there, right? But I think the Overton window has shifted to where it's okay to criminalize and demonize protesters, right? As long as we have the control and we can influence government in a way that's but it's okay. So going into an election again, when we've been talking about issues with voter enthusiasm, what could a politician say about this militarization, about this anti-woke police state that you feel like could increase enthusiasm to get people to get out to vote that care about shit like this?
Not shit. And I would love to hear your answer, but I feel like anything, especially after COVID and vaccines, that appears to have the president alienate the police is career suicide. It is a decision that you're making that you don't really want to, that you were choosing the public over the police, and that's not something they take lightly. What have we always said about the police? Fuck a blood, fuck a crip. The biggest gang in the United States is the fraternity of the police. They are not playing with you, baby. They do fundraising. They work together. They hide each other's secrets. They hide each other's lies. They live and die by some shit called qualified immunity. We can't even get presidents to talk in and weigh in on that when it comes to holding police accountable when they commit crimes in the cities that they exist in already. So what do I want an officer to say about it? Nothing that I would actually believe, because we've already proven at the top of this show that two mayors and a whole bunch of other politicians and people who are supposed to have public outcry about this shit have been like, you do you. Let us know when the project's done. We'll stop by and cut a ribbon with you. So politicians are not willing to become oppositional to the police, or even to convey that anything they back up can be against police. You don't have to get up and say, I am against the police and the things that they are doing. All you have to do is support effort to push conversations, to create space for voices to be heard. And that will be interpreted and perceived as an antagonizing move against the police, which will completely undermine your ability to gain supports of moderates. Because remember, the disdain for the police is a very left issue, right? It's a very, very far left issue. It is, moderates are like, police are necessary. We just need to slow down and think about what we're doing here. Yada, yada, yada. Maybe if more jobs are available, but we can't just get it. So they don't want to hear none of that yak about the police is bad. And we go, like, they're not compelled by those arguments, because they are some of the same people who have been carjacked because they parked somewhere in San Francisco and they got their windows busted in.
Yeah.
It's a lot of shit happening right now that just does not make it an appetizer mood to be like, to be like, yeah, the police got some work they need to do. So these anti-woke cities and the creation and the support that they get from the police, they're going to stay right there where it is, honey. Ain't no politician finna undermine none of that. It's not in their best interest. And we know politicians only care about their personal best interest when it's awesome.
So I agree. I mean, I don't think that it's anything that can be said. I don't think it's anything that can be said to undermine the efforts of like things like Cop City, because one, a part of like what Killer Mike was saying, like when like it's all about like picking our battles to a degree, right? Because, and not even saying this ain't a battle that we should pick. I'm definitely not saying that. My position is more, I think it's difficult when like I'm in California and I'm mad about what's happening in Atlanta, because as much as I would want to do things to influence what's happening in Atlanta, all I can do is what we're doing right now.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I can
critically analyze, bring together resources, have an educated conversation about it.
Right. Because I think what the biggest issue is where it's happening. Like politics in Atlanta have been like, if you don't have that moderate blackness that makes white people feel okay, but makes like the black generation, the voting generation, make them feel comfortable. That's how you get elected. That's how Raphael Warnock was able to get elected, right? That's how Keisha Lance Bottoms was able to get elected, right? They was able to appeal enough to both sides to where, like you
Yeah.
said, that radical nature wasn't there. And I want to hear politicians talking about the militarization of police though. Like, so it may not be that they talk about they talk about Cop City, you feel me, and like per se and say this is what we need to do to stop Cop City. But I think it needs to be something that's at least a part of the discussion, because as long as even if it's not police are bad, because I think arguing against the militarization of the police isn't the same thing as saying police is bad. Like, I think that there are liberal, moderate approaches that lean to the left that focus on the militarization, that focus on the overly surveillance. Because one thing that we talked about before the show, where I want to let our audience know, Atlanta is the most surveilled place in the country. They got a program. They got a program called what was it called? They got a program called, let me get it. We was talking about it earlier, Toya. What's it called?
I can't remember the name of it. Operation Do the Most. Operation Do Too Much. Like,
Yeah,
I don't.
yeah. It's Operation something, but there is a collection of cameras in private businesses, in public businesses, or in public spaces, in government spaces, in schools. They literally have a network of cameras around the city that's connected to like not just law enforcement, but like personal or independent security firms or security contractors. Like, all of these different law enforcement groups, whether they be private or public, have access to these cameras. And so now they've also flipped it to where they're trying to get facial recognition software, and they already got license plates readers. So like, really, in Atlanta, they trying to turn it into Minority Report, where they trying to predict where crimes are gonna take place and handle it before it happens. So in places like that, when you got like a government that's working with corporations to influence this type of approach to policing, it's not much that any politician can say. It's really more about how do people in Atlanta organize to be like, hey, Dickens, it was a nice run. We don't need you back though, big dog. You know what I'm saying? We don't need no re-election for none of that. So yeah, it's like, to me. Yeah, go ahead.
No, to you what?
Well, yeah, that's what I was just saying. Like, I feel you in the sense to where I would say that, like, I don't think it's anything that can be said that can increase like enthusiasm like with that per se. But I do think that politicians talking about the militarization of the police can do so strategically without demonizing police, but demonizing the militarization of it. You feel me? I think that's something that could be good messaging. But
Yeah, I mean, I think, when we look at the demands Black people are making, on policing, on the way cities are organized, I think some of the people saying no police are not being realistic. It's just kind of like the same people who criticize the government for the state or the state. If you look at current and contemporary African nations and African cities and how they're, facilitated. If you look back to before colonization happened, to Black people making and building community, there were metrics of policing. There were metrics of safeguarding cities and making sure that things ran functionally and this, and that. But there was a level of community care and a level and a baseline of that then shaped the tactics, shaped the techniques, this, and that. We see and we know the history of policing. How many times do we have to say it? Its roots in slavery cannot be ignored, right? When we talk about it, we do the genealogy of this particular institution. We speak directly to kind of its potential. If you want to know where you headed, look back at where you've been. And that'll tell you a whole lot about the implications of these types of practices. I say all of this to say, right, that is not a problem with policing. I do want to feel secure in my neighborhood. I do want to call a number and somebody respond if there's somebody acting against the law and against the best interest of myself and the people that I love. There's a whole lot about, you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like when we was growing up, like, of course, the police was out, like, we knew shit wasn't sweet, but I still feel like police officer was a commendable job to want to have. That's what I want to be restored to that particular position, is like some type of valor to that as people who meaningfully contribute on a consistent basis to our communities. No, not all police are the same. Not all cops are bad cops, but ACAB, because a lot of people cover up, don't complain. Ain't no police being like, I don't need this shit. I'm not being as comfortable, as peaceful. I build relationships with my people. I'm not going to take this certain tool with a bullet. But you know what I'm saying? You in the rank and file. You got to do what they say you got to do. So the refinement of the police, right? overhauling of the police. I'm not saying it should not be a police. I'm not saying when I call 911 that I don't want somebody to answer the phone and come fucking help me figure out who broke into my apartment and stole my car. What I'm saying is, I don't want to be a threat to them when they pull up. I don't want any issues or trauma or psychological or emotional disalignments that I may be having in that moment to impact that encounter. I don't like you know what I'm saying? So much shit that we just shouldn't have to tolerate. And it's in the face of these pleas and these cries that are very reasonable by very reasonable people. Their response is cop city. And that is startling. That is
So
shameful, and that will always be worth us kind of sitting here talking about, especially when we use our, like you pointed out, democratic constitutional right to protest, and now niggas got charged. Like that's what we come on. You know what I'm saying? Like, what are we really doing? But things are to be seen. You know what I'm saying? Things are to be heard, things are to be learned about all of this. And I'm glad that we got a place where we can always come back. Thank you, Miss Ma'am. I sneezed 2 times and I got blessed, and I don't take that lightly at all. So thank you for blessing me. But it's a lot to be seen about this. We just got to keep our heads on swivel for what's happening in our cities. You know what I'm saying? Because it's the only sign.
without a doubt. The last thing I'll say before we go ahead and let Toya go, while because she's gonna have to disinfect that whole mic. If not,
Don't
throw
do
that
that.
thing
Because I
away.
sneeze over there, baby. I know how to find my ankles. Don't do that. But carry on and close this show.
but look,
Don't be
but look. So I think what you're speaking to, Toya, is more so a question of how the issue with policing isn't the idea that we need safety measures in the community. It's more so the idea of safety measures in the community is at its foundation is anti-blackness. Because if you've heard us say on this show a million times, it's not actions that are criminalized, it's people. Right? It's not actions that are criminalized, it's people. And so any type of change to the police department has to deal with the fundamental racism that exists, not just in the police, but in our society. Like the ways in which society tells us to see blackness as a threat, even other black people. You feel me? Even other black people. So they $100 million is going to the establishment to build this anti-woke police state, to make sure that they're able to keep their foot on the neck of protesters and to continue the legacy of oppression that we've seen repeatedly in the South. That literally is at the foundation of Southern culture. I got into it with one of my homegirls on YouTube the other day because she's from Florida, and I straight up told her, like, listen, you can be proud to be from the South, but the foundation of culture in the South is racism, baby girl. And I know you're from there, and I know you're proud of all these things, but the reality is, at the bare bones, no matter how successful black people are in the South, Atlanta as a perfect example, they're always going to make sure that there's some type of plantation that exists. There are some overseers that are running around and gonna make sure that the white black racial order is maintained. You know what I mean? So we'll keep y'all updated on this. More conversations as more of this stuff can come out. We're gonna pay attention to these court cases to make sure that we, you know what I mean, we up on game, and we gonna task a lot of these politicians during this election season with actually speaking on the militarization of freaking police. I'm trying to do better cussing for YouTube monetization and all that. So, Toya, go ahead and close this out.
Hey, I said all I can say. Hit that thumb on the way out if you haven't already done it. We are looking to potentially talk to y'all again on Monday. If not, y'all know, meet us on Thursday night. But if not, meet us on Friday. Just know every week, once a week, we always here. And if you really want to stay in the loop, don't worry about times. Just hit the bell and it'll tell you when we popping in. And if you got time, tap in with us, man. Check Columbus, Miss Ma'am, Donnell, Barbara Loaded, Tucky V, Chrissy P, like Dina. It's so much love to y'all. Everybody who didn't drop a comment but still stuck around and listen. Thank y'all so much. We got love for y'all. Hit that thumbs up on the way out. And I think that's a wrap for me.
Hey man, it's been real. This the Chop Up. We will see y'all next time. Peace. And it's done.